There is absolutely no shortage in South Africa of race baiting. It's one of the number one ways to gain relevance. Not because the vast majority of South Africans actually care. In a poll that I showed you guys just last week, it showed that more than 70% of black people, who are the majority of people in this country, want South Africans to forget about the past and just move forward. They don't care about apartheid whatsoever. But there is a sizable minority that if you do play the racist games, they will follow. And since for most of the race baiters in this country, it's not actually about winning or about becoming president or about actual change, but rather just about making money, race baiting is a viable strategy. This happens a lot, specifically with followers of the EFF, because their, I guess, leader or cult leader is the master race baiter in South Africa. Herman Mashaba is trying to take that crown or at least be on the stage. But right now, Julius Malema is the base of race baiting. But then you also have the other side of the coin, but very much of the same coin. And this would be people like Creel. The video we're making today is very specifically going to focus on that particular brand of race baiting. Dan Corder, Kim Heller, these are all people who fall into this category. These aren't white people who genuinely care about black people. These are white people who suckle at the teat of grievance politics as a way to, first and foremost, get relevance and become famous. It's all about them. It has nothing to do with actually helping black people. And so any opportunity that they can have to gain more relevance by blowing the horn of race and racial issues in this country, they're not going to miss it, even if it makes them look incredibly stupid doing so. Now, following the conviction of Julius Malema for firing a rifle into the air, a crime that every single South African would be found guilty of, especially if there's actual video footage of you doing it, there has been, let's say, a lot of anger in and around the ex-bubbles of the EFF fighters with messages such as this: fighters, the mandate is very clear. Now, the message from Julius Malema is from 2016, but it shows a general sense. The EFF fighters are very, very ready to start violent revolutions. You have this user, for example, that says the message is clear, comrades. When they saw what they saw during the July unrest in KZN is just a tip of the iceberg. They must dare to try us with Julius Malema. They will regret the day they formed AfriForum. These are absolute threats to the safety, security, and the livelihoods of white South Africans who form part of AfriForum. But of course, it's not just white South Africans, because it's any South African that dares to stand against what the EFF is. And social media, again, absolutely full of people making all manner of threats against black people who dare to stand up against Julius Malema and who are celebrating this particular sort of outcome. Take, for example, Mr. Handsome here. Whites do not play with power when they don't like you. It's only blacks forcing the Rainbow Nation nonsense. Julius Malema will be persecuted by racists, and stupid blacks will cheer on because they hate that they are black. You have Kim Heller, of course, the second chief race baiter of this country, Herman Mashaba, much to his chagrin. No white lie. AfriForum's ongoing targeting of EFF President Julius Malema will backfire for apartheid-loving whites. If anything, the attacks on Malema will strengthen his support, not only in South Africa, but across the continent and in the diaspora. Aluta continua. Kim Heller, of course, again, just playing the racist game, not because she actually cares about black people, not because she actually cares about Julius Malema. Kim Heller cares about herself, and she has recognized that in a country with the majority of people being black, this is a nice way to get some kind of relevance. But I did tell you that we're here to join hands and listen to South Africa's third biggest race baiter, Kriel. And I thought it's probably a good idea to take this man to school. He misunderstands so many basic fundamental concepts, things that he should have had down at this point. But then again, I'm not totally surprised. You see, one of the things that education gives you, when you have a decent or at least moderately good education, is the ability to understand contexts and nuance. You'll see how he completely doesn't understand context. Context and nuance are incredibly important because both of those form part of what is known as critical thinking, the ability to think critically about a topic. Almost all young people in South Africa, and I would say the vast majority of people under the age of 35 today, suffer greatly from the ability to think critically about things that's happening. So take a listen to Peter Kriel's take on what happened to Julius Malema.
Julius Malema has just been found guilty of firing a rifle into the air at one of his political rallies. And that is pretty serious in itself. But I also want to point out the very hypocritical nature of the...
Now, notice he's absolutely spot on with this first bit. Julius Malema fired a rifle into the air. This is serious. For those of you that don't understand why, when you fire a bullet into the air, the bullet doesn't magically just stop traveling. The bullet continues, and the velocity of the bullet can actually continue to go at lethal levels, which means that that bullet can fall down back to earth and actually kill someone 2, 3, 4 kilometers away, dependent on the angle with which you shot, and that person wasn't anywhere near. Maybe you didn't plan to do it. This is why there are laws stating that you're not allowed to do that.
This case. But before I do, let me say this. I think it's very negligent for any political leader to go onto any stage and fire a rifle.
He's building up, by the way, to
where there's a crowd of people.
Here's the actual issue.
I also think...
So this is sort of the dishonesty of those on the left. The issue is Julius Malema fired a rifle into the air. That's the issue. That's the core issue here. And Julius Malema was found guilty for firing a rifle into the air. But notice how left-wing NPCs, that cannot be the issue. Because when they watched the trial, they saw a white man co-accused with Julius Malema. And the white man really is the issue here. Because everything always has to, if your job is grievance politics, everything must always return to your job, which is grievance politics. To a hammer, all problems look like a nail.
It's important to hold people accountable where necessary.
Mm-hmm.
His bodyguard, who was acquitted, and Julius Malema actually pointed out this hypocrisy, he got nothing. He was acquitted based on nothing more than the color of his skin. Because perhaps it was deemed not too bad.
Oh, that's why.
Let's look at this objectively and with context.
I'm glad you said that, Peter. Let's look at this objectively and with context. Everything you just said is completely false. He wasn't acquitted because of his race. He wasn't acquitted because of his skin color. You made the remark that that's the only reason, yet you have provided no evidence to actually support this. Except when you actually understand the law, you understand why he was acquitted. Let me show you. This is the video that ultimately got Julius Malema convicted. So you see Julius Malema shooting the gun into the air. You can see the muzzle flash of the gun. And this man here is Adrian Snyman. You see Adrian taking the gun from Julius Malema, but you never actually see Adrian giving the gun to Julius Malema. The problem that the defense ran into is every single person on stage that they asked to testify would not testify whether or not Adrian Snyman was actually the person who gave Julius Malema the gun. There was another security guard on stage from the same firm as Adrian Snyman, and Adrian Snyman's defense successfully managed to cast enough doubt to where the judge couldn't say with absolute certainty that it was Adrian Snyman that handed out the gun and not this other security guard. And since the other security guard was not charged, because again, he does not appear in the video at least implicates Adrian Snyman. The other security guard isn't in the video. So if they were to bring a case against the other bodyguard, there would be literally no evidence. You don't ever see him handling the weapon. You don't see him giving the weapon to Julius Malema. You don't see him taking the weapon from Julius Malema. So the defense tried their utmost to make the case that Adrian Snyman was the one who gave him the weapon, and Adrian Snyman's defense just said, prove it. No one on stage would testify that Adrian was the one who gave Julius Malema the weapon. They all said that they didn't see or that it didn't happen. Adrian Snyman just said, I didn't give him the weapon. He didn't have to say that it was the other bodyguard, because that would have gotten the other bodyguard pulled into court. So instead, he just said, I didn't do it. It wasn't my gun. The gun belonged to the company that I own, but it wasn't my gun. Right? And that's ultimately how he was able to get off, because the law requires that you are proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There can be no doubt to your guilt. As you can see from this video, there's a lot of doubt, right? We don't know. No one would come forward. No one would actually say where Julius Malema got the gun. But in terms of what Julius Malema did, that's just obvious. I'll show you again. That's Julius Malema. And you can see the muzzle flashes, and you can hear the gunshots, and there you see him laughing, giving the gun back to Adrian Snyman. That's why Julius Malema was found guilty, but that's also why Adrian Snyman couldn't be found guilty, because all they have is him getting the gun from Julius Malema and rushing effectively to Julius Malema to get the gun. That's all we have.
Julius Malema went onto a stage and he fired a gun. His bodyguard was there and complicit.
No, his bodyguard was there. There's no complicity has been established. We see him taking the gun. It is not illegal for me to remove a gun from someone who is using the gun illegally. In fact, that would be very legal of me to do, right? So all you have is him on stage, sure, but you don't have him on anything else.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you go to a bank and you take your friend with you, and both of you take part in robbing that bank.
Notice the incredible dishonesty from Peter Creel in what he just said. So he makes a claim and he says he was complicit. So in other words, the guilt is already assumed. So now listen to the dishonest scenario that Peter Kriel establishes here. He says, if you go and rob a bank and you take your friend with you and your friend helps you rob the bank. But hold on, Peter. Let's first establish that my friend did actually help me rob the bank, because in this scenario, what we have is my friend on camera entering the bank alongside me. We then have me robbing the bank and my friend taking the gun from me that I'm using to rob the bank. We don't have any evidence of my friend helping me rob the bank. We have my friend looking as if he's rushing and grabbing or taking the gun away from me and then walking out or off out of the video shot. That's what we have. That's the truth of what happened here, not the spin that you're trying to put on it.
Even if you are not the one holding the gun, you are still complicit in bank robbery.
No, but that's not true. Because my friend may have invited me, or I may have invited my friend to give me a bit more of an innocent look. My friend may have no idea that I'm about to rob that bank.
You are still an accomplice. And therefore, I think this highlights a crack in racial disparity in this country. It shows that there's a malfunction in our justice system.
No, there's a malfunction, all right. It's in the education system that you came out of. Because the fact that you have outright lied, just straight up lied, and I think you don't even know that you've lied. From your perspective and the biases and the worldviews that people like Peter Kriel have, this is the only way that they can see the world. Because the bodyguard is white, he was found innocent because of his whiteness, but because Julius Malema was black, he was found guilty because of his blackness. This has nothing to do with the case. I will remind you that the prosecutors are from the state. The state prosecutors were black. They weren't white. So how exactly are these black men persecuting a black man over a white man? Why would they do that? They tried to make the case against Adrian Snyman. The problem is there's no evidence and no one on stage from the EFF would in any way, shape, or form snitch on Adrian Snyman. Julius Malema himself said they found him innocent, and that is good. Right? That was Julius Malema's case. The next part of Julius Malema's sentence, where he says, "But how can he be innocent if he, how can he be innocent of giving me the gun if I had the gun and they convicted me because of the gun? Because there was another security guard there, and according to the judge, either one of these could have given you the gun, but the fact is we saw you fire a gun. We can't send an innocent man to jail for giving you a gun if we don't know if he gave you the gun, but we do know you had a gun and you fired it. That we know. But it's a he said, she said scenario of who gave you that actual gun."
Because yes, Julius Malema should be held accountable, and I think he should take on that accountability. But he should also not stop speaking against racial disparity and malfunction in our justice system. It would be the right thing to do, to take accountability. But he's also not wrong in pointing out a clear racial disparity.
This guy is so dangerous. But the lucky thing for us is that he's also very stupid. That's the only saving grace we have right now. Is Peter Kriel isn't the smartest leftist I've ever heard. Because I have heard leftists make arguments that's a lot harder to disprove. Luckily, his is pretty simple because he's very young. He clearly has not yet formed any amount of intellect with which to really approach this high level of dishonesty. And so he makes arguments that are so easily refutable that it's actually laughable. If you're a member of the EFF and you've been watching up until now, I doubt it, but if you have, I have some words of encouragement for you. If you don't want your leaders to end up in jail, stop having leaders that break the law. It is truly as simple as that. Julius Malema isn't paying his dues because that's what all revolutionaries go through. Julius Malema is being convicted and is being tried because he continuously breaks the law. That's just how it works. Every other ordinary South African would be going through the same thing. As always, hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't. And let me know in the comment section down below what you think of Peter Kriel and this whole scenario. How everything in this country just consistently turns into race is actually quite funny at this point. And then a massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members for continuing to support this channel and supporting myself. I truly appreciate you. Mercy for the guilty is punishment for the innocent. Question everything. A peace.